We're going to get back to the hearings now. The House Select Committee on Intelligence quizzing Mike Morrell, the former acting director of the CIA.
Serious intel product that is actually, you brought it up on the 13th.
So I don't remember saying that there was, briefing the deputies that there was a protest at the deputies meeting on the 13th, but I would not be surprised at all that I did so.
The way I understand it,
why do I say,
maybe this will spur your recollection, because I know it was a long time ago, that you got an update on the call from the chief of station and the charge. You got an update. Mr. McDonough led the call. You got a quick update, and then Mr. McDonough turned to you, and you talked about this new stream of this new product.
Correct.
Is that right?
So again, I don't remember, but as I said, I would not be surprised if I briefed the deputies on the 13th that the attack had evolved from a protest. Why wouldn't I be surprised? Because that very morning, we published a piece that said that. And my job as deputy director was to represent the views of the CIA at the deputies meeting. So I wouldn't be surprised at all, sir.
Right. So did the Deputy National Security Advisor, Dennis McDonough, who's now the White House Chief of Staff, did he know about that product before you mentioned it?
Which product are we talking about? On the 13th?
Yes, the 13th.
He would have read that product that morning.
Had you conspired beforehand?
No.
Okay.
Conspired to do what?
To talk about this, that the protests had led to the attack.
No.
Okay, so you had not talked to Dennis McDonough. He was not prompting you to announce that this.
This was the CIA's considered judgment at the time. A written product produced, disseminated.
I thought it was all the IC community had signed off on the product. Okay. So I think one of the problems here, Mr. Morrell, is the charge, the station chief, the base chief, the diplomatic security officials, all the DOD officials, and all the CIA station personnel that were in Benghazi have all reported by this time that the assault began as a pre-planned attack, not a protest. So, in other words, the product that you were using on the 13th was contradicted by every single person that was on the ground in Libya.
Didn't know it at the time, sir. Didn't know it until Saturday morning when the chief of station sent his email.
But what were you guys talking about then on the Deputies Committee meeting that occurred on the 12th and the 13th?
So on the 12th, there was no discussion of a protest. There was no discussion of a protest on the 12th. On the 13th, any discussion of the protest would have been based on the classified product that was produced that morning.
But in all the discussions, were you ever involved in any discussions with Tripoli?
Yes, they were, as I said.
On the 12th and the 13th?
They were on the screen on the 12th, and I believe they were on the screen on the 13th.
And wouldn't they have said that this wasn't a...
They did not say this was not a protest. I do not remember that.
This committee, the chairman actually went out on, as he said in his opening statement, the chairman, we had at this committee significant intelligence product, where the chairman of our committee was able to go out and say this was an attack. On the 12th, I believe. And you're telling me you're on calls with Tripoli, deputies, with the deputies committee, sometimes twice a day, and you don't know until the 14th or 15th that everybody on the ground believes this was a pre-planned attack.
Sir, we believe from the get-go that this was an attack. We believe from the get-go that this was a terrorist attack. The analysts did not believe then or now that there was significant pre-planning.
I understand that, Mr. Morrell, but the problem is that you've got all of these conflicting stories, right? The stories that you talked to the senators, and it was what Mr. King brought up, that they were changed by the FBI, not the White House. Report later you took responsibility for that. Then there's other contradictions about whether or not in the talking points, whether the White House was involved or not. All of this has proved to be false, but I read your testimony and you have an excuse for everything. For everything. For all of that you have an excuse for, which is fine. But when the chairman asks you about when you sat next to Jim Clapper in November 2012, you don't have an excuse, you only have an apology.
I have an explanation of why I did not say anything in response to the question who took al-Qaeda out of the talking points, because I did not know at the time who did that.
But I think
My
what
apology,
the chairman was asking, Mr. Morrell.
my apology,
You sat in front of our committee in November of 2012, and you had a chance to stop. You wouldn't have had to be here today had you just said what you knew at the time.
Oh, I don't believe that at all, sir. I'd be here anyway. Because the only thing I would have been able to say at the time was, Mr. Chairman, I do not know who removed al-Qaeda from the talking points, but what I can tell you, Mr. Chairman, is that I myself played a role in editing those talking points. That was the only thing I could have said at the time.
I know my time's expired, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for letting me go over. Yield back.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Morrell, on September 11th, we know that there's a fair amount of activity that was going on at the compound that day in Benghazi. Chris Stevens was active that day. The Turkish ambassador had come to visit Ambassador Stevens at the compound that day. We know from eyewitness testimony on the ground, contemporaneous in time, from the RSO who was there, that the Turkish ambassador, when he was there and all through the day, there were no sightings, no indication in any way of any gathering of any protesters around the compound around Benghazi. There was closed-circuit television. There was the February 17th Brigade. There were people there offering security. No one at any time prior to the attack gave any indication that there was a protest going on at the compound. The RSO himself said there was nothing going on at the compound. The chief of station in Tripoli had no indication of any protests going on. The political officers had no indication of anything going on. The GRS officers coming from the annex over, no one, anyone involved in this situation, no one had any indication of a protest going on. And yet, the Obama administration allowed its spokesman for the first time in the first public disclosure, 5 times on the Sunday morning shows, made a false narrative that a YouTube video was the reason that explained that there were protesters that we now know are apparitions, never existed, were there. This is a false narrative. That's why this is not a small issue. This is a big issue, Mr. Morrell. Because we have emails in front of us, cables in front of us that don't lie. That's not a conspiracy. And the emails and the cables are very clear about what we knew and when we knew it. We know that while the attack was going on, that there was already from the State Department at 4:05 p.m., an alert that was put out from the State Department that the compound was under attack. The second was at 6:08 p.m. that Ansar al-Sharia, an al-Qaeda-linked terrorist group operating in Libya, claimed credit for the attack. We also know that a cable that was sent on September 12th by CIA station chief in Libya reported eyewitnesses confirmed the participation of Islamic militants and made clear that U.S. facilities in Benghazi had come under attack. Even your first draft from the CIA prepared, distributed internally, showed, this was 11:15 a.m., we have date stamps on it, that the CIA and the U.S. government knew that Islamic extremists with ties to al-Qaeda participated in the attack. All of that we knew. What changed is when the talking points, prepared again by your office, when those talking points intersected with the White House. And those organizations within the White House included senior State Department officials, senior national security officials, all of those that you talked to us about, Robert Cordillo, Alan, Matt, Jake, Mark, Lisa, Ben, all of these, the only change that happened were senior White House officials. And we know from the emails, particularly from Victoria Nuland, that has been referenced by my colleagues from the date stamp time, again at 9:24 p.m., Ms. Newland wrote that the problem remains. Her superiors were unhappy. The changes that were made did not resolve all my issues or those of my building leadership. We also know Ben Rhodes from the National Security Foreign Policy further advised the group. The issues will be resolved in a meeting of top administration officials the following morning at the White House. At the White House, Saturday, before Ms. Rice went on the Sunday morning shows. They were resolved all right. They were resolved in the favor of the White House. And what's really odd here is that the false narrative that was given on Sunday morning on the Sunday morning shows somehow strangely added up with the view of the White House 6 weeks before the presidential election that al-Qaeda was nearly defeated and the global war on terror was over. Everyone on this committee knows that wasn't true, that al-Qaeda wasn't defeated. Everyone on this committee, both sides of the aisle, knows that the global war on terror was not over. That was the narrative of the White House in the run-up to the presidential election. How weird that that ultimately was reflected in the talking points against all knowledge from people on the ground and knowledge this committee had. That's why we're upset, because the American people, from my perspective, were intentionally misled by this administration as to what happened in Benghazi.
Chairman, can I respond? I'd make 2 points, ma'am. Number one, the narrative that the attack evolved spontaneously from a protest was a narrative that intelligence community analysts believed. Not just CIA analysts, intelligence community analysts. That turned out to be incorrect, but that is what they believed at the time. So there is no politics there whatsoever. That's point number one. Point number two is, let me actually give you the facts of what the State Department changed in those talking points and what the White House changed. The White House changed 3 things. The first thing the White House changed was to add Cairo in front of the word embassy for the sake of clarity. The second thing the White House changed was to rearrange a couple of sentences, purely stylistic. The third thing the White House changed was to change the word consulate to diplomatic post for accuracy. Those were the only changes the White House made. The changes the State Department made, 2, just 2. They too wanted to change the word consulate to diplomatic post for exactly the same reason. The second change the State Department made was to remove the entire bullet on Ansar al-Sharia, because State Department said it was premature to single out a specific group, and the CIA agreed because the only unclassified evidence we had at the time was Ansar al-Sharia's public statement, which they then retracted. So the State Department and the White House made 5 changes only, all of them, in my view, fairly insignificant.
Mr. Morrell, they didn't have to change because you made the changes for them.
The changes.
That's the point. That's why you're in front of this committee today. You made significant substantive changes for the White House. Whether it was on behalf, we don't know, but we know you are the one who made those changes.
Ma'am, if you look at the record, what you will see is the changes I made were fully consistent with what our analysts believed at the time, period.
The analysts that were part of the bureaucracy, not the individuals who are on the ground who had eyewitness testimony and who as early as September 12th had sent you a cable that it was not a protest, that it was in fact an attack. Those were intentionally ignored.
So ma'am, do you believe that we should have accepted the Chief of Station's view without question that it was a protest?
I believe that the totality of the information was obfuscated and that there was an intentional misleading of the public.
Because if you believe that we should have accepted his explanation of what happened, then you also need to accept his view that it could have been the video that motivated the individuals to attack the diplomatic facility that night.
We spoke with him yesterday behind closed doors. He was adamant from the very beginning that this was not a spontaneous protest. We heard from him directly yesterday that at no time did he believe it was based upon the video. It isn't just him. It's the RSO. It's the chief of base. It's those who came from the annex. It is the political officers. All of them agreed. You take that versus some press reports And one signal versus the weight and balance aren't even equal. It isn't even equal. The evidence overwhelmingly pointed to an attack that was Al-Qaeda or jihadist related.
It wasn't just one piece of SIGINT, ma'am. There was also reporting from the station.
More than one SIGINT?
There was also
more than one SIGINT?
There was also
that wasn't our understanding.
There was also reporting from the CIA station that there was a protest, as well as from the Department of Defense. There was a human piece, there was SIGINT, and there was human from the Department of Defense. There was multiple intelligence pieces.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Mr. Morrell, for being here. Thank you for your service to our nation, and I will also thank all of those who...
Fireworks on Capitol Hill in front of the House Select Committee on Intelligence as Mike Morrell, who was acting he was the deputy director and acting director of the CIA at the time of the Benghazi attacks in September of 2012, as he testifies in front of that committee. You heard Representative Michele Bachmann, Republican from Minnesota, giving a pretty good summation of what Republicans believe, many believe, is the problem with what happened that night. The talking points were adjusted to reflect the administration's claim, and in fact the Obama campaign claim, that Al-Qaeda was on the run. If you'd like to continue to watch the hearings, we have them streaming for you live on foxnews.com. In just a moment, we expect to be talking with Representative Peter King of New York, a man who clashed with the witness during this morning's testimony. He'll be our guest coming up when Happening Now returns.